Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere warm, sandy, and surprisingly full of breakfast beer. You're about to spend a day in the skin of an ordinary Egyptian farmer, the kind of person who never makes it into the flashy hieroglyphs, but who actually kept the whole civilization running. You'll wake beside the Nile, shuffle through dust and reeds, and maybe even learn how to avoid annoying crocodiles before lunch. You probably won't survive this, honestly, not because of war or plague, but because ancient Egyptian mornings start very early and coffee hasn't been invented yet. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before the sun. The air is cool, almost kind. The room smells faintly of clay and last night's embers. Your reed mat rustles as you shift, and outside, the low gurgle of the Nile murmurs through open shutters. Somewhere in the distance, a hippo yawns, loudly, like an old door complaining. That's your alarm clock. You'd give anything for a snooze button, but the ancient Egyptian world doesn't do mercy before dawn. The roof of your mud brick home glows with the first stripes of light. The walls sweat a little from the night's humidity. A rooster announces himself with the confidence of someone who's never been eaten, and the sound blends with the rhythmic croak of frogs retreating into the marshes. This is the daily orchestra of your life, a mix of life, mud, and predictable chaos. You sit up, stretching arms that have already known years of plowing, harvesting, and lifting. Your linen kilt is folded neatly beside you, rough but clean. You slip it on, brush a bit of dust from your hair, it never really goes away, and reach for a clay cup filled with yesterday's cool water. You take a sip, notice the faint taste of earth, and decide it's still better than chewing sand. The morning smells of firewood and wet straw. Through the doorway, you can see the Nile shimmering in the distance, still and enormous, its surface broken only by the lazy ripple of a passing crocodile. You tell yourself he's not looking for breakfast yet. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptians really worshipped crocodiles out of fear or genuine admiration, but you, personally, lean toward fear. You tie a small amulet around your wrist, a carved Eye of Horus meant to keep bad luck and scorpion bites away. It's an old charm, inherited from your father, slightly chipped but comforting. It's your version of checking the weather app before leaving the house. The charm promises that if you respect the gods, your crops might forgive you. You're not entirely convinced, but it's better than nothing. Outside, the village is waking. Smoke begins to drift from low mud brick ovens. Children's laughter mixes with the grunt of donkeys, and somewhere an impatient goose stages a one-bird protest. The sky blushes pink, gold, and then white, as if the gods are painting it fresh each morning. You take a breath, a mixture of damp earth and the faint sweetness of date palms, and step into the cool sand. There's a sense of calm in these moments, the kind that makes you forget that later today you'll be knee-deep in irrigation ditches. Right now, there's just the soft crunch of sand beneath your feet and the faint hum of insects beginning their shift. You glance at the river again, the Nile, your lifeline, your grocery store, your highway, and occasionally your worst enemy when it decides to flood too much or too little. Historians still debate exactly how precise the flood predictions were. Some say priests could read the stars.
Others claim it was just experienced guesswork and crossed fingers. Either way, you're grateful you're not the one doing the math.
A fisherman drifts past on a small papyrus boat, his reflection rippling across the water. You can almost hear his soft chant to Hapi, the god of the river, asking for calm currents and generous fish. You mutter a quiet, good look under your breath. It's a small community here. Every prayer counts, even borrowed ones. The world is still hushed, half asleep, and the sunlight finally touches your face. It's warm already, promising another blistering day. The mud beneath your sandals is soft, cool, for now. In an hour, it'll turn into cracked dust, and you'll long for this brief mercy. You stretch again, shake your arms loose, and smile faintly. This is your dawn, predictable, ancient, and oddly beautiful. There are no roars of engines, no city noise, just the soft rush of the river and the sigh of wind through reeds. You take one last deep breath, savoring the cool air before it disappears, and step back inside to see if your family has stirred. Behind you, the horizon brightens, and the Nile catches fire with gold. You think, maybe just for a second, that it's a good day to be alive, even if your back will complain about it later. You grab your walking stick, scratch your beard, and mutter a small thanks to Ra for not raining frogs today. Your stomach grumbles. Time to see what's left from yesterday's bread. You shuffle back inside the mud brick house, where the shadows still cling to corners and the air smells faintly of grain dust and smoke. The roof beams above are low, made from palm trunks laid side by side, and a small hole in the wall lets in a narrow beam of early sunlight. It lands directly on your sleeping mat, turning its rough fibers into a patch of gold. The room is simple. A few clay jars, a small chest for linens, a chipped jug for water, and a grindstone that has been passed down so many times it hums like an old relative. Your home is not built for luxury, but for survival. Walls of sun-dried mud that keep the heat out during the day and the cold out at night. Historians still argue whether most farmers built their houses themselves or shared the work communally, but in a village this small, the truth is likely both. If someone's wall collapses, everyone shows up with a trowel and advice they didn't ask for. You stretch again, a low groan slipping out, partly from habit, partly from the ache in your shoulders. You slept on a woven mat, and your spine has opinions about that. You rub your neck and catch a whiff of the dried reeds that make up the flooring. They smell faintly sweet, like hay baked in the sun. Somewhere in the next room, a pot clinks. That means your wife is awake, which means the day has officially begun whether you like it or not. The ceiling creaks slightly as someone, your oldest son, climbs up the small ladder to the roof to check the drying grain. You can picture him squinting at the sky, pretending to understand weather signs like the priests do. You remember doing the same when you were his age, staring at clouds and pretending to read divine messages, when really you were just trying to look wise while avoiding chores. You shuffle toward the doorway, pushing aside a curtain of woven papyrus. The light is stronger now, pouring into the main room where your wife is kneeling over the grinding stone. The rhythmic scrape of pestle on grain is the ancient world's version of morning radio, constant, dependable, and slightly irritating before breakfast. The air is full of fine dust glowing in the sunlight. You sneeze once, twice, then pretend it didn't happen because dust is just part of the decor. Your wife glances up, gives a nod that's somewhere between good morning and get to work. Her hair is tied with a linen strip, her hands moving automatically, grinding emmer wheat into coarse flour. She doesn't stop to talk,
She's done this every day since childhood. You smile softly, not that she can see it, and head to the small corner where your sandals wait. They're simple, made of woven papyrus. One strap is fraying, but they still do the job. You slip them on and flex your toes, feeling the grit underneath. The sandals were a wedding gift, not romantic, but deeply practical. Ancient Egyptian love, you think, smells like new papyrus and survival. You duck through the doorway into the small courtyard. The sun is higher now, and the light feels different, brighter, sharper, like a promise and a warning. A goat bleats from the pen nearby, offended that breakfast is late. Two chickens argue about something philosophical, probably worms. The village around you hums to life, clatter, chatter, and that one donkey who always thinks he's a prophet. Your youngest daughter appears, half asleep, hair wild as a tumbleweed. She's dragging a little reed doll missing one arm, and you swear she looks exactly like her mother when she's pretending not to hear you. You yawn so wide you can see the faint trace of last night's lentil stew on her chin. "Water," she mumbles. You hand her a cup from the jar beside the doorway, and she gulps it down, spilling half on her dress. You smile and wipe her face with the corner of your kilt. Then comes the smell of the fire being rekindled, smoke and ash mixing with the warm sweetness of grain. It's breakfast time, or as you like to call it, another chance to eat something brown. The air fills with the faint hiss of dough meeting clay as your wife pats out flat rounds of bread and slaps them onto the inside of the oven. The heat licks your face when you step closer.
You grab a small clay bowl and pour in a splash of beer. Not the bubbly modern kind, but a thick, half-fermented brew made from barley. It's low in alcohol, high in calories, and mildly suspicious in flavor. You take a sip, grimace slightly, and nod to yourself. Yes, still terrible, but at least consistent. Historians still debate whether this kind of beer was considered food or drink, but you've always thought of it as liquid bread that forgot to finish baking. As you sip, you glance around the room. The same walls, the same tools, the same faintly cracked statue of Taweret, the hippopotamus goddess of protection, sitting on a shelf. Her round belly and fierce face have watched over your family for years. You whisper a good morning to her, partly out of respect, partly out of superstition. If you keep the household spirits happy, maybe they'll keep the scorpions from showing up in your shoes again. A fly buzzes near your ear, and you swat lazily, missing entirely. Your wife smirks. You try to look dignified, fail immediately, and pretend to examine the bread instead. The crust is golden, fragrant. You tear off a piece, dip it in a paste of mashed beans and onions, and chew thoughtfully. It tastes like work, like patience, like something that's been the same for 1,000 years. Outside, a neighbor calls a greeting as he passes, his voice rough but cheerful. You shout back, and the echo bounces through the narrow lane. In the distance, the temple gong rings, a hollow, resonant sound that seems to ripple across the whole village. It's time to think about the fields. You glance down at your hands, calloused and brown from sun and soil, and flex your fingers. They crack like old papyrus. Another day, another chance to chase good harvests and avoid blisters. You take one last bite of bread, wash it down with a gulp of thick beer, and grin at your wife, who pretends not to notice. The sunbeam on the floor has creeped higher now, touching the edge of the door. You know what that means. The day has begun in full, and the Nile waits, calm, shimmering, and ready to remind you who's really in charge. The soft chatter of morning swells into full conversation as your house comes alive. The children, energized by flatbread and sunshine, start chasing each other through the courtyard, their bare feet slapping against the packed earth like a drumbeat of small chaos. One goose squawks in protest. It's unclear whether it's part of the game or a victim of it. Either way, its wings flap wildly as your youngest son runs away laughing, feathers trailing behind him like trophies. You lean against the doorway, arms crossed, pretending to supervise. In reality, you're still trying to wake up. The beer helped, but what you really need is another hour of sleep, or maybe a divine intervention from Ra himself. You glance toward the horizon and mutter, "Just 5 more minutes of shade," knowing full well the sun doesn't take requests. Inside, your wife keeps grinding grain, humming softly. It's a simple tune, one of those melodies that doesn't have a beginning or end, passed down through mothers who learned it without ever realizing they did. She hums while measuring flour by instinct, while shooing away flies, while pretending not to listen to your half-hearted jokes about trading the children for a quieter life. Your eldest boy, about 10 years old, comes in carrying a bucket of Nile water that sloshes dangerously close to spilling. He's trying hard to look capable, shoulders stiff with determination. You remember when he was barely tall enough to reach the handle, and now he's already dreaming of working in the fields with you. He sets the bucket down proudly and wipes his forehead like a miniature laborer. You ruffle his hair, and he gives you that look all sons give their fathers when affection interrupts their dignity. The smell of bread fills the air again. It mingles with sweat, straw, and the faint musk of livestock. Scents that no one here finds unpleasant. This is the smell of life continuing exactly as it should. You tear another piece of bread and hand it to your daughter, who immediately feeds it to her doll. The doll, made from bundled reeds and wrapped in linen scraps, looks better fed than most villagers. From the next house, you hear laughter. Your neighbor, Mena, is already shouting at his goat for eating part of his sandals again. This happens often enough that it's practically a tradition. You grin, because a day hasn't truly started until Mena's goat misbehaves. Historians still argue whether goats were kept more for milk or companionship, but Mena's goat exists purely for drama. You step outside into the alley, ducking beneath a low arch of dried reeds. The light hits your eyes like a promise and a punishment. The village stretches before you, mud brick houses clustered together, their flat roofs stacked with drying herbs, onions, and pottery. Chickens peck between footprints in the sand. A couple of women carry jars balanced on their heads, walking with that effortless grace you've never quite managed. The jars glisten with condensation, cool from the river. You wave at them and get a polite nod in return. Here, conversation happens through gestures more than words. Everyone knows what everyone else is doing, and there's comfort in that predictability. Still, you find yourself wondering what it would be like to live in one of those houses closer to the temple, closer to the scribes, the priests, the whispers of magic. Then you remember that they pay higher taxes and immediately lose interest. Your children follow you out, still mid-game. They're chasing a hoop made of bent reeds, rolling it along the street with sticks. Their laughter bounces off the walls, chasing away the last shadows of dawn. You remember being their age, running through the same dust, dreaming of the same things, catching fish, building boats, maybe one day owning a cow instead of just borrowing one. Your wife calls from the doorway, "Don't forget to bring back onions." You nod automatically, even though onions are the one thing you always forget. She knows this, but it's part of your morning ritual now. a tradition of small failures that somehow means love. You sling a woven basket over your shoulder, partly to look productive, mostly to justify leaving before you're asked to repair the chicken pen again. The sun's heat is starting to build, curling off the sand in shimmering waves. The villagers move like clockwork, each to their task, each step the same as yesterday. You find comfort in that rhythm. As you walk toward the communal well, you pass a small shrine set into the wall, a faded painting of Bess, the dwarf god of laughter and home protection. His round belly and mischievous grin seem to mock you kindly, as if to say, "Cheer up, you're still breathing." You rub your finger across the worn stone, more habit than faith, and keep walking. At the well, a few other farmers are already gathered. They greet you with lazy nods, their voices rough from sleep and dust. One of them, Passer, is telling a story about a dream he had where a talking ibis told him the Nile would flood early this year. Historians still argue moments like this make you laugh inwardly. Dream omens are half the reason half the fields get planted too soon. You smile and tell him maybe the ibis was drunk. The men chuckle, and someone mutters that even the gods need better hobbies. You pull the rope to draw water, muscles straining slightly. The bucket creaks, the rope squeals, and droplets splash your arms. It's cool, blessedly so. You pour some into a jug and take a sip straight from the bucket. Cold, metallic, refreshing. You let the water run down your chin and sigh. Back home, you hear the faint sound of your wife calling again, but her voice blends with the general morning hum, donkeys braying, birds shrieking, men shouting greetings across the fields. You know she's reminding you of something, but you can't quite catch it. Maybe onions again. Definitely onions again. You turn toward the Nile, where the sunlight now dances like fire on the surface. The air hums with heat, and a soft breeze carries the smell of wet earth and lotus flowers. It's going to be another long day, another ancient routine wrapped in dust and divinity. You smile faintly and think the gods must love farmers because they keep making more of them. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise, your goose manages to escape again. You sigh, grab your stick, and start the chase.
The goose chase ends about as well as expected, with you standing knee-deep in mud, your dignity somewhere upstream, and the goose looking entirely too proud of itself. You mutter something unholy under your breath, and it honks back as if mocking you. The morning sun has climbed higher now, baking the ground into a pale glare. The Nile glimmers nearby, wide and steady, pretending it doesn't see your struggle. You finally herd the creature back toward the yard, brandishing a stick in mock threat. Your youngest son claps from the doorway, finding this the funniest thing since the last time you fell in the canal. You bow theatrically, because if you can't win, you might as well earn applause. Inside, breakfast is ready. Your wife has laid out a small clay platter, 2 loaves of coarse emmer bread, a few onions, and a jug of thick, frothy beer. You sit cross-legged on the floor, tearing bread into pieces and dipping it into a paste made from beans and a hint of oil. The texture is rough but comforting. The flavor simple, earthy, slightly sour. You glance at your wife and joke, "You could sell this to the Pharaoh's chefs," and she rolls her eyes so hard you can almost hear it. The children eat quickly, as if the food might disappear. Crumbs scatter across the mat. You catch your youngest trying to feed the goose again and give a look stern enough to stop her mid-gesture. She pouts, and you sneak her an extra bite anyway. Parenthood, you think, is 60% rules and 40% breaking them quietly. You pour a little of the beer into a second cup, the morning's version of generosity, and hand it to your eldest son. He takes it reverently, sips, and tries not to make a face. It tastes of fermented barley and faint regret. Historians still argue whether this breakfast beer counted as hydration or morale booster, but to you, it's just tradition, mildly unpleasant, absolutely essential. As you eat, the household settles into a rhythm. Clink of cups, scrape of grinding stone, a faint hum of flies. The light creeping through the doorway grows brighter, slicing golden bars across the floor. Your wife starts humming again, the same endless tune, while you chew slowly, lost in thought. The sound is hypnotic, like the turning of a wheel that never stops. You think about your father, how he used to sit in the same spot, eating the same bread, staring at the same river. He taught you how to tell when the Nile was about to rise by the color of the water and the smell of the wind. He said the river had moods, just like people, and if you learned to listen, it would tell you everything. You didn't believe him at first, but now, years later, you swear sometimes you could feel the Nile's temper in your bones. The air grows thicker as the sun climbs. You wipe your face with the edge of your kilt and glance at the small shrine by the door. A simple clay shelf holding two figures, Tawaret, round-bellied and fierce, and Bess, grinning and stubby-legged. You reach up and tap the base of each statue twice, a morning habit that means, keep my children safe and my tools sharp. Historians still debate how literal Egyptian household devotion was, but for you, it's practical. Better to have too many gods than too few. After breakfast, you rise and stretch. The mat creaks under your knees. The air smells faintly of baked grain and sweat. You gather the empty bowls and carry them to the corner jar to rinse. The water is cool and cloudy, flecked with bits of straw. It catches the sunlight like liquid amber. Your wife speaks without looking up. The fields will be dry today. Take the boys, leave the goose. You nod, pretending you were planning that anyway. She smirks faintly. There's a peace between you that doesn't need words, the peace of two people who have long since run out of surprises for each other. You step outside again, squinting against the brilliance. The village is alive now. Voices, footsteps, the clatter of tools, the groan of a cartwheel. You can hear someone tuning a harp near the temple, a lazy melody drifting over the rooftops. It mixes with the call of ibises and the distant bray of donkeys. Every sound feels like part of a pattern, one you've heard so many mornings it's almost sacred. You follow the narrow lane that winds between houses. The mud brick walls lean slightly inward, casting ribbons of shade. Women are sweeping thresholds, tossing water to keep down the dust. The smell of baking bread trails from every doorway. For a moment, the entire village feels like one big oven full of laughter and noise. At the corner, you stop to greet your neighbor, old Panayesi, who sits cross-legged on a stool sharpening a hoe. His hands are brown and knotted like tree roots. Hot already, he grumbles. You agree, wiping your forehead. The gods woke up early, you say. He chuckles. Then maybe they'll get tired sooner. You both laugh softly. The joke's not funny, but it's familiar. As you walk on, you pass a group of young men carrying baskets of reeds. They nod respectfully. You're older, slower, but still strong enough to command a kind of quiet authority. You wave back, remembering the time you could lift a full basket without groaning. Now, your knees negotiate every movement like diplomats. A faint breeze stirs the dust. You look up at the sky, blindingly blue, endless. The sun glints off the water channels that lace through the fields. Somewhere, an ox bell rings. That means it's almost time. You head back home briefly, collecting your tools, a wooden plow, a curved sickle with a blade of copper, and a woven hat that's more hole than shade. You sling them over your shoulder, feeling the familiar weight. Your wife hands you a small pouch of bread and dried figs for later. You thank her, and she smacks a mosquito off your arm in reply. You grin and kiss the top of her head, then call to the boys. They appear instantly, one carrying a basket, the other the water jar, both ready, both pretending not to be excited. The goose honks indignantly as you close the gate. You mutter, "Stay out of trouble," knowing it won't. The village path stretches before you, winding toward the river, the heart of everything. The sunlight glitters on the water's edge like spilled gold. You take a breath and step forward, feeling the day begin to unfold, slow, ancient, and unchanging, as if time itself has decided to take a nap.
The path to the fields winds past the last cluster of houses and into the wide open plain. The air changes out here. The scent of mud and life thickens, warm and damp. The river glows to your left, quiet and watchful, its surface broken only by the slow blink of fish or the soft thud of a crocodile tail somewhere far downstream. You shift the plow on your shoulder and glance back once. The village looks small from here, a scatter of sun-baked rectangles under the pale sky, smoke drifting lazily from breakfast fires. You can hear faint laughter, the bray of a donkey, the ring of a hammer against stone. Life hums behind you, but ahead it stretches into stillness, the great patient fields, waiting for hands to stir them. Your sons walk beside you, barefoot in the soft dust. The older one hums a tune he learned from the temple drummers. The younger one keeps skipping ahead, chasing dragonflies and pretending the sickle he carries is a sword fit for Ra himself. You smile, remembering when you did the same, when the fields felt like a kingdom instead of a responsibility. The first task of the day is always the same. Check the water channels. The irrigation ditches snake from the river like veins, feeding life into every plot of land. You crouch beside one, watching the slow crawl of muddy water, thick with silt. You reach in, scoop some up, let it run between your fingers. It smells of clay and fish and something faintly sweet. The Nile has started to rise early this season, a good omen if it doesn't flood too high. Your eldest kneels beside you. "Will it be enough this year?" he asks quietly. You think before answering. "If we respect it," you say. "The river gives what it wants, not what we ask." He nods, though you know he doesn't quite understand yet. The Nile isn't a gift, it's a negotiation. Every farmer in Egypt learns that sooner or later. You walk further down the canal, stopping where the bank has collapsed a little. With your son's help, you dig and pat the edges back into shape, using clumps of wet earth to patch the gap. Your hands are soon covered in mud, cool and heavy. The smell rises sharp in the sun. It sticks to your skin like memory, the same smell that clung to your father's hands and his father's before him. Once the water is flowing properly again, you move to the edge of your plot, a stretch of dark, fertile ground lined with half-grown stalks of barley. The crop sways faintly, whispering as the breeze brushes through. You drop the tools and breathe out slowly. This is the true pulse of Egypt. Not the temples, not the palaces, but this quiet green breath beneath the sun. You and your sons begin to work. The older one takes the plow, driving it in shallow lines across the soil, while the younger follows behind, breaking clods with a wooden stick. You gather handfuls of seed grain and scatter them wide, rhythmic, methodical, the same gesture repeated across centuries, from king to peasant, with no change but the name. The grains fall like a slow rain, vanishing into the brown earth. Sweat beads on your neck, trickling down your back. The air hums with insects. Every so often you hear a distant shout, another farmer calling for help with a stubborn ox, or perhaps just singing to keep himself awake. The heat builds steadily, turning the horizon into a blur. You pause to sip from the water jar, the liquid warm but still refreshing. By midday, the sun sits directly overhead. The shadows vanish, the fields shimmer, mirage-like. You and the boys find a patch of shade near a low acacia tree and collapse there with relief. The ground is hot, even in shadow, but at least the glare softens. You pass around the bread and figs your wife packed, then the water again. Nobody speaks for a long time. The silence feels sacred, like the world has paused to breathe. A hawk circles high above. Its cry cuts through the stillness, sharp and brief. Your younger son shades his eyes. "Is that Horus watching?" he asks. You grin faintly. "Maybe," you say, "or maybe he's just hungry like us." The boy nods solemnly, unsure whether that's a joke. You lie back, resting your head on your arm. The world smells of earth and heat and slow time. You watch the sky, the color of polished bone, and think of all the mornings that have looked exactly like this. How many generations have stared at the same clouds, worrying about the same harvest? How many men have prayed to the same gods and hoped the Nile would be kind? The thought doesn't make you sad. It comforts you, as if you're part of something vast and continuous, too big to ever really vanish. After a while, you close your eyes. You can feel the faint pulse of the ground beneath you, the tremor of water moving through roots and tunnels, the deep heartbeat of Egypt itself. You drift somewhere between waking and sleep, lulled by the sound of the wind through the barley and the soft buzz of flies. When you finally sit up again, the sun has begun its slow descent. The light has changed, no longer harsh, but molten, like gold poured thin across the world. You rise, stretch, and brush the dust from your legs. Your boys are already gathering the tools, eager to be done before the overseer makes his rounds. You glance toward the river again. Its surface blazes with reflected fire, dazzling and alive. Somewhere across that water, the pharaoh's priests are performing their rituals, chanting words you'll never hear. But in this quiet corner of the world, your ritual is simpler: seed, sweat, sunlight, and patience.
You nod to the sky, whispering a small prayer to Happy, the spirit of the Nile, not for wealth, not even for luck, just for balance.
You glance down at the tools spread across the sun-baked earth. The wooden plow, worn smooth in your hands. The copper sickle, catching little flashes of sunlight. And the small basket for carrying seed. Each one carries a story. A scrape from a stubborn rock. A dent from a dropped stone. A groove worn deep by years of use. Even the simplest objects have personality here, in the hands of those who have relied on them for generations. Historians still argue whether copper tools were considered luxury items or everyday necessities. But for you, they're simply life, wrapped in metal and wood. Your sons stand nearby, waiting for instructions. The older one takes the plow with a determined frown, trying to make his lines straight and even. The younger follows, carrying the basket of seeds. He occasionally stops to swat at flies or pick up a stray pebble, and you let him. It's not laziness, it's part of growing up in this rhythm of field and sun. You remember doing the same as a boy, weaving patience into every step, learning that the land teaches more than your parents ever could. The day stretches ahead, hazy and golden. You dig the plow into the soil and it bites with a satisfying resistance. The scent of freshly turned earth rises to your nose, rich, dark, and alive. Each furrow you carve is a line in an invisible map of generations. The same ground tended by men long gone, their sweat and toil still lingering in the soil. As you work, a small desert lizard scuttles past, disappearing beneath a clump of reeds. You pause to watch it for a moment, thinking it's remarkable that life can survive here in such heat. A faint breeze stirs, carrying the scent of water, mud, and something sweet from distant lotus flowers. You inhale deeply, letting it fill your lungs, and feel a slow, satisfying calm. The plow cuts through soil, the sun glints off a copper, and the Nile whispers far away. Your eldest son struggles to keep the line straight, muttering under his breath about crooked rows and the overseer noticing. You chuckle quietly, reminding him that the river doesn't care if the lines are perfect. It grows anyway, you say. He rolls his eyes but nods, eventually finding a rhythm. The younger one sprinkles seed into each furrow, scattering it evenly, occasionally flicking a seed too far and laughing when it lands in a tuft of grass. The sound is infectious, a gentle melody in the otherwise quiet fields. Sweat beads on your forehead, trickling down to mix with dust. The heat intensifies, and yet there's a comfort in the labor, in the steady repetition of motion and purpose. You remember stories of pharaohs commissioning massive projects, pyramids, temples, statues. But it's the small work like this, invisible to history books, that truly sustains life. Your family, the neighbors, the entire village depend on this quiet diligence. From across the fields, you hear the faint voice of another farmer singing a soft, lilting tune to encourage his oxen. It's barely audible, but enough to remind you that everyone is synchronized to the same pulse: the sun, the soil, the water, and the eternal flow of the Nile. You hum along softly, adding your own rhythm to the work, and feel a satisfying sense of connection to your sons, to the earth, to generations of farmers before you. The wind shifts slightly, cooling the sweat on your skin. A bird cries overhead,
sharp and sudden, and your sons look up, trying to identify it. You shrug, saying, "Maybe it's Horus keeping watch." They nod solemnly, clearly entertained by the suggestion. Historians still debate how literal Egyptians took their bird omens, but for now, it's enough to keep your spirits light in the sun. The plow strikes a stubborn root, jolting your shoulder. You grunt, adjusting your stance. Even as your muscles protest, there's a rhythm to the resistance, a dialogue between hand and tool, earth and blade. You work steadily, breathing in the mingling scents of mud, barley, and your own sweat. You glance at the Nile shimmering in the distance, its surface reflecting the relentless sun, and feel a quiet gratitude. Time stretches, and the sun climbs higher. You pause to take a long sip from the water jar, letting the cool liquid soothe your throat. You glance at your sons, still working diligently, their small frames moving in sync with the land. There's a satisfaction here that can't be measured, a deep calm in contributing to something larger than yourself. By late morning, the furrows are straight, the seeds planted. You wipe your brow, admire the work done, and glance around the fields. A few birds perch nearby, curious about the freshly pruned earth. Your youngest picks up a small stone and tosses it gently, startling a dove into the sky. You laugh softly. The simplicity of life, the small joys, and the unbroken rhythm of day. The overseer hasn't appeared yet, and you breathe a quiet sigh of relief. You look at your sons, hand them small pieces of leftover bread, and watch them eat. The moment is fleeting but sweet. In the middle of the hot, demanding day, these small intervals of comfort and connection are treasures. You take one last look at the plowed lines stretching across your plot. Neat enough, imperfect, and entirely yours. The land is alive, the river patient, and the sun relentless. You feel, in this quiet, muddy, golden hour, a sense of being exactly where you're supposed to be.
You lift your hat, letting the thin breeze cool the back of your neck, and step carefully along the edge of the newly plowed furrows. The soil, dark and heavy, clings to your sandals and the fabric of your kilt. It's a satisfying stickiness, a reminder that your labor is tangible, real, and utterly necessary. The younger son skips ahead, stopping occasionally to examine a particularly fat worm or a shiny stone. He crouches, fascinated, and you resist the urge to scold. Curiosity, after all, is the seed of learning. The older boy walks beside you, mimicking your stance as you check the irrigation ditches that run like veins through your fields. Water flows steadily, but you notice a slight leak where the bank has softened. It's minor, nothing catastrophic, but enough to demand attention. Historians still argue how systematically farmers maintained canals. Some say daily inspections, others argue it was only in response to crop threat. But for you, the answer is simple. Check, repair, repeat. You kneel by the small breach, patting the mud into place, pressing it firmly with your palms. The water splashes lightly against your forearms, cool in contrast to the heat of the sun above. Your sons watch, learning the subtle technique. Not too much pressure, not too little, just the right rhythm to keep the flow steady. It's one of those skills that takes years to master, yet everyone in the village knows the urgency of perfecting it. Once the ditch is secure, you pause, letting the rhythm of the river echo in your mind. A heron lifts gracefully from the far edge of the canal, making a lazy circle in the sky. The younger son points and whispers, "Is that a messenger of Thoth?" You grin. "Maybe."
Or maybe he's just hungry. The bird disappears behind a cluster of reeds, leaving only the ripple of water and the distant cry of another river bird. The fields stretch endlessly, rows of barley and lentils, waiting for the sun to finish its climb. You run your hands along a furrow, feeling the subtle vibrations of the earth, the way life hums beneath the surface. Each seed you planted is a promise, a tiny pulse of potential, waiting for sun, water, and your care. This connection between your hands and the land is quiet, sacred, and often overlooked in tales of grandeur and pharaohs. Your sons begin to imitate the movements you taught them, bending, scattering seeds, smoothing soil. The younger one is more chaotic, occasionally flinging a handful too far, while the older strives for precision, brow furrowed in concentration. You correct gently, demonstrating again, your movements smooth and practiced. Sweat glistens along your back, the sun warm but not unbearable, and a faint breeze carries the scent of wet earth mixed with barley. A neighbor, returning from his own fields, calls a greeting, and you wave. He points toward the river, where water lilies bloom faintly, and jokes about the pharaoh's fish swimming lazily upstream as if they own the place. You laugh softly. These small interactions are the social thread of village life. Even in labor, humor persists, tiny and resilient, like seeds sprouting in fertile soil. You stop briefly to drink from your water jar, wiping the condensation from your lips. The cool liquid feels miraculous in contrast to the heat, and the taste of the river's essence reminds you why life clings so stubbornly here. The flow of the Nile isn't just practical, it's spiritual, a lifeline, a mirror reflecting centuries of human endeavor. Historians still debate exactly how much ritual influenced agricultural practices, but you know instinctively, respect the river, and it respects you. Your gaze drifts across the fields, noting the gentle sway of crops and the occasional insect buzzing lazily above the soil. A small lizard darts across a furrow, vanishing into a shadow cast by a clump of reeds. You smile. The world is alive in ways subtle and extraordinary, and the heat, sweat, and labor make you acutely aware of it. You begin walking down another furrow, checking for pests. Locusts are rare this year, but you know better to be complacent. Even the smallest bite can become a catastrophe in weeks. You brush off a few stray insects, swat a fly, and smile at your son's fascination with every twitching creature. It's both a lesson in diligence and a gentle reminder that life in this world is messy and persistent. A hawk cries again from high above, slicing through the haze of sunlight. The older son looks up, shading his eyes. "Do you think it's Horus?" he asks, half in awe. You shrug, a small smirk tugging your lips. "Maybe, or maybe he's just thinking about lunch." He laughs, and you hear the younger one giggling as he scampers after a lost seed, carrying it back to the proper row with pride. The sun climbs relentlessly, but there's a rhythm now. Hands, tools, and earth move together in a silent dance. You feel a quiet satisfaction in the work, in the land, and in the small hands following your lead. There's no fanfare here, no record in the grand temples, just sweat, soil, and generations worth of routine, patient, and unglamorous labor. By mid-morning, the furrows are neat, the seeds planted, and the irrigation secure. You lean on your plow, looking over the fields with quiet pride. The river shimmers, the wind stirs the barley, and somewhere nearby, a neighbor laughs at a goat tipping over a basket of onions. Life continues, small, repetitive, and entirely magnificent in its ordinariness.
The sun has risen to its full glory now, casting harsh, golden light across the fields. You pause, squinting at the horizon, and feel the warmth on your back intensify. Sweat has soaked into your linen kilt, your hair sticks to your forehead, and even the dust seems heavier under the midday sun. The children are still at your side, energetic but growing restless. Their earlier enthusiasm is tempered by heat, the weight of baskets, and the steady rhythm of work. You wipe your brow and take a deep breath, letting the scent of wet soil, barley, and distant river water fill your lungs. There's a peculiar comfort in it, a grounding reminder that life continues here, in these ordinary, sun-baked moments. You glance at the irrigation ditches. The water still flows, steady and patient. Checking these channels is routine, but you know from experience that neglect could spell disaster. A blocked ditch means wasted seeds, parched soil, and a frustrated overseer. Historians still debate how rigorously farmers monitored these channels, but your experience tells you diligence is survival. Your eldest son kneels beside a stubborn clump of earth, trying to loosen it for planting. You crouch down to guide his hands, showing the subtle pressure needed to break the soil without crushing the tender seeds. The younger one watches eagerly, scattering seeds as you go, occasionally tossing a small handful too far and laughing when it lands outside the row. These tiny mistakes, these bursts of joy, are the texture of childhood in the fields, a gentle balance between instruction and freedom. A faint breeze rustles the barley stalks, carrying the smell of water and mud. It lifts some of the dust from the paths, creating tiny whirls of dirt that dance in the sunlight. You pause for a moment, letting the wind brush against your skin. It's as if the land itself breathes with you, whispering encouragement through every ripple and rustle. A bird calls from the edge of the field, perhaps an ibis or a heron, and you trace its flight with your eyes, marveling at the effortless grace. Your neighbor, returning from his own fields, waves lazily, balancing a basket of reeds on his head. He calls out a greeting, joking about the Pharaoh's fish swimming upstream with purpose, and you chuckle softly. These small interactions, brief and simple, anchored the day. They remind you that the village is more than work and sun. It's a web of connections, laughter, and shared responsibility. You kneel to inspect one of the younger boy's rows. He has done well, scattering seed evenly, but a few grains lie outside the furrow. You correct him gently, showing the precise technique for spacing and depth. He imitates you carefully, eyes wide and serious. You can see the pride in his posture. He's learning not just to work, but to honor the land. Sweat drips into your eyes, stinging slightly, and you reach for your water jar. The cool liquid is a relief, washing away dust and fatigue, and you sip slowly, savoring the sensation. Around you the field hums with life, insects buzzing faintly, birds calling from the riverbank, barley swaying in the breeze. Even the sun seems to pulse with steady energy, relentless yet comforting. You glance across the fields, noticing small details: a lone flower at the edge of a row, a snake slithering silently along the bank, the glint of copper tools lying in the shade. Life persists in every corner, resilient, patient, and unnoticed. It reminds you that even in ordinary work there is wonder, quiet, subtle, and pervasive. The children pause for a drink and a piece of bread. Their energy returns quickly, and soon they are at work again, scattering seeds and smoothing soil. You watch them, your heart swelling quietly. Generations of farmers have moved through this land, and now your sons are part of that unbroken rhythm. It's exhausting, repetitive, sometimes frustrating, yet undeniably sacred. By the time the sun reaches its peak, the major planting is done. You stand and stretch, muscles warm and pleasantly sore. You look over the fields, neat, imperfect, alive, and feel a deep satisfaction. The water flows steadily, the seeds are in place, and the world hums with continuity. Somewhere a goat brays, a neighbor laughs, and the river whispers its eternal song.
The heat of midday settles like a blanket over the fields. You pause for a moment, standing tall with the sun pressing down on your shoulders, sweat trickling along your spine. The barley sways gently around you, bending in rhythm with the soft breeze, as if acknowledging the day's toil. Your sons sit for a brief respite, their baskets set aside, hands brushing dust from their knees. Even in rest, they watch the land with curiosity, learning the subtle language of earth and sun. You take a sip from your water jar, feeling the cool liquid slide down your throat, a small oasis in the relentless heat. The smell of soil and seed is strong and rich, filling your senses with the essence of life itself. You glance across the field, noting the subtle movements: a lizard darting into shade, a bird flitting from reed to reed, and distant farmers working in steady rhythm. Historians still argue how structured village labor was, but here it feels instinctual, a dance repeated across generations. You walk along a furrow, inspecting the irrigation ditches once more. Water flows smoothly, reflecting sunlight like scattered gold. A small leak at the far edge catches your eye, and you kneel to press mud into place, fingers tracing the contours with practiced precision. Your sons watch intently, learning the tactile wisdom embedded in each motion. Every adjustment, every pat of soil is a silent lesson in patience and foresight. Nearby, the younger boy tosses a stray seed, giggling at its erratic bounce. You can't help but smile. Chaos has its place alongside order, and the lessons of the field extend beyond planting. Discipline, curiosity, and laughter all thrive under the same sun. The older son straightens furrows with methodical care, brow furrowed, tongue peeking slightly between his lips in concentration. You nod, approving, letting him take pride in his emerging skill. A faint breeze carries the scent of lotus and river, mingling with mud and sweat. The air feels alive, vibrating with quiet energy.
You pause, shading your eyes, and watch a hawk circle high above. "Horace?" the older boy whispers. I shrug. Perhaps. Or maybe just a hungry bird. He giggles, and even the younger one cackles at the idea, content in their shared amusement. The sun climbs higher, and the heat thickens, making the labor both arduous and meditative. Each furrow plowed, each seed scattered, is a rhythm, a heartbeat, a continuation of centuries of practice. The connection to those who worked this land long before you is palpable, a quiet pulse under your hands and feet. You lean on your plow, muscles warm and satisfied from exertion, and take another long drink of water. The irrigation channels glisten under the sun, small mirrors reflecting blue sky and golden light. A neighbor calls from across the field, joking about his stubborn oxen refusing to obey. You wave and grin, appreciating the small levity. These small exchanges stitch the village together, invisible threads of humor and camaraderie woven through toil and sun. Your sons begin to mimic your motions again, kneeling to adjust soil, checking the water flow, scattering seeds. Their movements are clumsy but earnest, and you correct them gently. Each moment is a lesson in rhythm, patience, and respect for the land. You watch them, feeling a swell of pride that's quiet but profound. By mid-afternoon, the major planting and ditch repair are complete. The sun has begun its slow arc toward evening, casting long shadows across the fields. You stand, stretching, feeling the satisfying ache of muscles used well. The land is prepared, the seeds sown, and the river continues its patient whisper. You glance at your sons, now carrying the tools back toward the shade. Their laughter drifts lightly across the field, mingling with the distant calls of birds and the gentle rustle of barley. Life continues, ordinary, steady, and entirely magnificent in its simplicity. The sun dips slightly, softening the harsh midday glare into a gentler, honeyed light. Shadows stretch across the field, curling around furrows like lazy cats. You stand for a moment, brushing dust from your arms, and take a deep breath. The heat is still present, but less oppressive, and the rhythm of the day seems to slow, as if the land itself is exhaling. Your sons follow behind, carrying tools and baskets, chatter fading into the hum of evening activity. You glance at the furrows, neat and orderly, but still imperfect in small human ways. A few seeds were scattered beyond the rows, a minor flaw, but it feels more alive because of it. Each furrow is a quiet testament to effort, patience, and the ancient dialogue between hands and soil. Historians still debate how much ceremonial thought accompanied planting, but in this moment, the act feels sacred simply because it is deliberate. You kneel by the irrigation ditch again, ensuring water continues to flow steadily. Fingers pressing mud into soft banks, you feel the subtle vibrations of life. Water moving, soil settling, and roots beginning their slow push into the earth. Your eldest son watches attentively, mimicking your movements with care, while the younger boy sprinkles water into small clumps of soil, experimenting, learning through touch. The lesson is practical, but it is also rhythm, patience, and observation woven together. A breeze carries the scent of river and mud, mingled with distant cooking fires from nearby houses. You pause to sip from your water jar, savoring the cool relief. The barley sways gently, whispering as it brushes against itself. Somewhere nearby, a bird calls, its note slicing briefly through the soft hum of insects. These small, persistent details, wind, sound, scent, create the quiet orchestration of life in this village. Your younger son giggles at a lizard darting past, following it with his gaze. You kneel beside him, letting him observe, appreciating the curiosity that glints in his eyes. Life exists in microcosms here, not only in crops and rivers, but in tiny creatures, subtle interactions, and fleeting moments of delight. You chuckle softly when he tries to catch the lizard, only to have it slip away with astonishing speed. Your eldest straightens a furrow, brow furrowed, lips pressed together in concentration. You nod approvingly, letting him take pride in small mastery. It's fascinating to watch him learn that even repetitive work can carry dignity, that rhythm and care can turn labor into quiet artistry. The younger boy adds seeds into any gaps left behind, occasionally tossing one too far and laughing at the minor disaster. These imperfections, these human touches, are what make the fields alive. A hawk circles lazily overhead, a shadow moving over the barley. "Do you think it's Horus again?" your older son whispers. You shrug lightly, smiling. Maybe, or maybe it's just a hungry bird. They both giggle, the sound drifting gently across the sun-warmed land. Humor, you realize, is as essential as water and sun. It sustains the spirit, even when the body is tired. The sun is now beginning its slow descent, shifting light to a softer, warmer glow. Long shadows stretch across the fields, marking the passage of time. You take a moment to drink again, letting the water slide down your throat, refreshing and grounding. Each sip is a small ritual, a reminder of continuity, of the river's patient service to all life along its banks. You glance at the river shimmering in the distance. It is constant, eternal, and indifferent, yet utterly sustaining. Your mind wanders to ancestors who stood on this same soil, planting seeds, repairing ditches, watching the river reflect the sun. There's a strange comfort in this continuity, a sense of participating in a cycle that stretches far beyond your own life. As the day shifts toward evening, you gather the tools and direct your sons back to the small shade of the acacia tree near the house. The land has been prepared, the irrigation secured, and the seeds sown. There is a quiet satisfaction in this work, a gentle fatigue that hums through muscles and bones. Life, in all its ordinary rhythm, continues faithfully, beautifully, and unremarkably perfect.
The sun has dipped lower now,
casting long, lazy shadows across the fields. The golden light softens the harshness of the day, turning dust and soil into warm amber tones. You walk slowly, muscles pleasantly sore from hours of labor, your sons trailing behind, carrying tools and baskets, occasionally joking and nudging one another. The air feels cooler, carrying the faint scent of river, mud, and distant cooking fires, mingled with the subtle perfume of wildflowers growing along the bank. You pause by the irrigation ditch to check the flow one last time. Water ripples gently, glinting in the light, a silver ribbon threading through the soil. Fingers press gently against the banks, smoothing mud where it has loosened. The younger son crouches beside you, fascinated by the tiny insect skimming the water surface. You smile, letting him observe. Lessons in the field are as much about noticing the small miracles of life as about planting seed. Historians still debate whether Egyptians formally taught such observation, but here it is simply absorbed, a natural part of daily labor. The older son straightens up, brushing dirt from his hands, and squints at the furrows. "They look perfect," he says, pride evident in his voice. You shake your head gently, laughing. Perfect is boring. Good enough is extraordinary. He grins, understanding in part, though he will learn the full lesson over years of toil. The younger one tosses a stray seed into the air, catching it with a small squeal of delight. Life in motion, in balance and imperfection, feels like its own kind of sacred. A hawk glides lazily overhead, wings outstretched, casting fleeting shadows across the barley. "Horus again?" the older boy whispers. You shrug. Maybe. Or maybe he's just hunting. They laugh softly. The bird's shadow drifts across the land, a reminder that even in ordinary toil, there are companions in the sky, silent witnesses to the day's work. You take a deep breath, feeling the coolness of the approaching evening mingle with the residual warmth of the soil. The barley sways gently in the breeze, brushing against each other in a soothing rustle. Somewhere far off, a woman calls to her child, and the soft echo drifts across the fields. The rhythm of village life, labor, laughter, water, sun, flows unbroken, a silent but essential music. Walking slowly back toward the shade near the acacia tree, you gather your tools, brushing dust from the plow and wiping the copper sickle with a worn cloth. The younger boy skips ahead, chasing a dragonfly, while the older boy carries the basket of seeds with deliberate care. You glance at the river, its surface catching the last shards of sunlight, and feel a quiet gratitude for its constancy. Without this water, the fields would be barren, and life would falter. Your muscles ache pleasantly, a reminder of the day's labor and the satisfaction of work well done. You pass a small group of reeds growing along the edge of the field, glancing down to see a tiny frog hiding beneath their shade. You point it out to the boys, and they crouch to observe, their curiosity still alive despite fatigue. Even in ordinary moments, there is wonder, subtle, quiet, and grounding. You sit briefly under the tree, passing small pieces of bread to your sons. The older one chews thoughtfully. The younger nibbles with distracted enthusiasm. Around you, the land glows in the soft amber light.
the breeze carrying a faint hum of insects and distant voices. The land feels alive, patient, enduring, like a gentle reminder of time's continuity. The work is done for now. Irrigation checked, seeds sown, furrows straightened. You stretch, feeling the warmth of the sun fading, and let the quiet of late afternoon settle around you. The rhythm of life here, labor, observation, rest, and repetition is steady, meditative, and timeless.
The late afternoon sun casts a soft, golden haze across the fields, stretching shadows long and lazy over the furrows. You walk slowly along the rows, brushing your hands against the warm soil, feeling the subtle vibration of life beneath your fingers. Each seed you planted hours ago is invisible, but present, a tiny promise nestled in the earth, waiting patiently for sunlight and water to coax it into growth. Your sons follow at a gentle pace, baskets slung over their shoulders, stepping carefully to avoid the freshly plowed lines. You pause near a small patch of wildflowers at the edge of the field. A butterfly flits lazily from bloom to bloom, its delicate wings catching the sun. You watch it for a moment, appreciating the fragile persistence of life in these ordinary corners. Historians still argue whether Egyptians consciously incorporated natural observation into daily work, but here it is instinctual. Children learn through the slow unfolding of life around them, not just through instruction. Your older son straightens a furrow, concentrating on keeping it even. The younger boy kneels to examine an insect that has wandered into the irrigation ditch, whispering excitedly to his sibling. You kneel beside them briefly, demonstrating how to gently move the creature without harm. Even in the small, repetitive actions of the day, lessons ripple outwards: patience, care, attention to detail. These are the quiet foundations of life along the Nile. A hawk cries from high above, circling lazily against the fading sky. "Horus again?" the older son murmurs. You shrug with a smile. Perhaps, or perhaps just a bird enjoying the warm air currents. The boys laugh softly, a sound that mingles with the rustle of barley and the faint hum of insects, filling the late afternoon with gentle, ordinary music. You check the irrigation ditches one last time before dusk. The water flows steadily, a silver ribbon reflecting the last light of the sun. Fingers pressing mud to reinforce weak banks, you feel the connection to countless generations who have tended this same land. Each adjustment, each small act of care is part of an unbroken rhythm. The younger boy sprinkles a little water over a stray seed, experimenting with gentle arcs, and you watch, letting him discover his own method. The air cools slightly, carrying a mix of river scent, dust, and the faint aroma of cooking fires from the village. The children pause to rest under a small acacia tree, eating pieces of bread and figs your wife packed. They chatter quietly, recounting moments from the day: a lizard chased, a hawk sighted, a clump of stubborn soil loosened. The ordinary details feel momentous in their smallness, a rhythm repeated across centuries. You stretch your arms, letting the satisfaction of completed work settle in your muscles. The land is secure, the irrigation functioning, and the seeds planted. The sun dips closer to the horizon, painting the sky in warm oranges and soft purples. Somewhere along the riverbank, a heron calls, a single sharp note breaking the gentle chorus of evening.
Walking back toward the shade of your home, you glance across the fields, noting the long shadows, the swaying barley, the gentle movement of water. Life continues in quiet, persistent rhythm. Labor, observation, rest, and repetition. You take a final sip from your water jar, savoring the cool relief, and watch your sons gather tools, laughing softly as they prepare to leave the field. The day winds toward night, and a gentle sense of completion settles over you. Sweat, soil, sun, and water have woven together into the ordinary poetry of life along the Nile. Even as you step toward the village, the pulse of the river, the whisper of barley, and the hum of insects remain constant and reassuring.
The sun has begun its slow descent behind the distant horizon, casting a soft, amber glow over the fields. Shadows lengthen across the barley, stretching out like lazy fingers. You gather your tools, brushing the dirt from the wooden plow and wiping the copper sickle, the smooth metal cool against your palm. Your sons trail behind, carrying the smaller baskets of seed and sharing quiet jokes. The day's labor has left them tired but content, and their laughter drifts through the warm air like a gentle melody. You pause for a moment, leaning on the plow handle, and take a long drink from your water jar. The liquid is cool and sweet, carrying the faint, earthy taste of the Nile. Sweat dries on your skin in the mild evening breeze, and you feel the comforting ache of muscles used well. You glance across the field. The furrows stretch neatly into the distance, lined with seeds now hidden beneath the soil. Each one is a small, patient promise. Historians still debate how deeply religious Egyptians considered everyday labor, but you know instinctively, care, attention, and respect are prayers in their own right. Your sons kneel briefly under the shade of a low acacia tree, sharing pieces of bread and figs. The older one straightens a furrow with a practiced hand. The younger sprinkles the last of the seed over a small patch. You crouch beside them, demonstrating gentle corrections, your hands brushing against theirs. Each movement teaches rhythm, precision, and patience. Lessons that will outlast your lifetime, carried in small actions across generations. A hawk glides silently above, its shadow drifting across the golden fields. "Horus again?" the older son whispers. You smile faintly. Perhaps, or maybe just a hungry bird. The boys laugh softly, the sound mingling with the rustle of barley, the hum of insects, and the gentle whisper of the river nearby. These moments, small and ordinary, are threaded with a quiet magic, a reminder that life continues in cycles of labor, observation, and gentle joy. You pause for a moment, leaning on the plow handle, and take a long drink from your water jar. The liquid is cool and sweet, carrying the faint, earthy taste of the Nile. Sweat dries on your skin in the mild evening breeze, and you feel the comforting ache of muscles used well. You glance across the field. The furrows stretch neatly into the distance, lined with seeds now hidden beneath the soil. Each one is a small, patient promise. Each promise of bread, present and future. Each one a guarantee that the river continues and the sun will rise again and again. Each moment is an act of worship carried in the dirt under your fingernails. Each moment is a reminder that the land is rich with the breath of gods,
and you are but a small part of that rhythm. The acacia tree stretches its shadow across the field, blending with the soft sway of barley and the gentle murmur of water. You gather your sons, and together you begin the slow walk home. Each step leaves faint impressions in the dust, temporary but meaningful traces of the day's labor. The rhythm of work, sun, soil, and water has brought completion, satisfaction, and connection to each other, to the land, and to generations past. Evening settles fully, painting the horizon in deep golds and soft purples. The village hums faintly in the distance, a reminder of the continuity of life. Sweat, dust, sun, and water have woven together into ordinary poetry, and for a moment, you pause, letting it sink in. The river continues its quiet song, the barley sways in gentle rhythm, and the world feels expansive yet intimate, eternal yet momentary.
The final light of day fades into a soft twilight, and the fields are bathed in muted purples and blues. You walk slowly, your sons beside you, each carrying a small basket or tool, their movements languid with fatigue, yet still lively with curiosity. The air is cooler now, carrying the subtle scent of wet soil, river water, and distant cooking fires. Shadows stretch across the furrows, bending the barley into dark, rhythmic patterns that seem to breathe with the evening. You pause to take a long sip from your water jar, letting the cool liquid soothe your parched throat. Each breath carries the lingering warmth of the sun and the faint hum of the earth settling into night. You glance over the furrows, now quiet and undisturbed, each seed resting beneath the soil like a tiny heartbeat. Historians still debate exactly how much ritual was woven into ordinary farm life, but here, the sacredness is felt simply in the rhythm of work, sun, and water. Your older son straightens his posture and brushes dust from his hands, proud of the furrows he has helped tend. The younger one kneels briefly to examine a small insect, whispering excitedly before returning to your side. You kneel beside them, showing gentle corrections and adjustments, but mostly you watch. The lessons of patience, rhythm, and care already taking root in their movements. A hawk drifts overhead, casting a fleeting shadow across the field. "Horace again?" the older boy whispers. You shrug, smiling softly. Maybe, or maybe just a hungry bird. The boys giggle quietly, their laughter mingling with the soft rustle of barley, the distant hum of insects, and the gentle whisper of the river nearby. These ordinary sounds, subtle and continuous, form the quiet symphony of life along the Nile. You check the irrigation ditches one final time, fingers pressing gently against weak banks. The water flows steadily, reflecting the deepening sky in glints of silver and gold. Your actions are small but vital, a continuation of generations' work, a quiet devotion to the land that sustains life. You rise slowly, brushing dust from your knees, muscles pleasantly sore from the day's exertion, and let your gaze wander over the fields. The sun has fully set now, leaving a soft, fading glow on the horizon. The barley sways gently in the evening breeze, whispering against itself. Somewhere, a neighbor calls out to his children, a faint echo across the fields. The rhythm of the village, labor,
rest, observation, and quiet play continues uninterrupted, a comforting certainty. You gather your sons, walking slowly toward the small shade of the acacia tree near your home. The children are tired but content, carrying the day's memories, discoveries, and small triumphs. You take a deep breath, letting the cool evening air fill your lungs. Life here is ordinary, yet profound, a tapestry of sweat, soil, sun, water, and subtle joys. As darkness approaches, fireflies begin to dot the field edges, tiny sparks flickering in the dim light. You watch them, feeling the persistent, patient pulse of life everywhere, in insects, river, barley, and children alike. Sweat, soil, and toil have given way to calm, reflection, and gentle satisfaction. The rhythm of the Nile, the rhythm of the land, the rhythm of generations past and future all converge in this serene moment. You sit briefly under the acacia tree, sharing quiet bread with your sons, letting the soft hum of evening lull the senses. The air cools, shadows deepen, and the world seems to slow its breathing. The day's labor is complete, yet the pulse of life persists, steady and comforting. Every furrow, every seed, every small interaction with the land and children feels like a subtle prayer, a testament to ordinary endurance and quiet joy. The fields are still, the river whispers softly, and the village hums faintly in the distance. The sun has set fully, leaving stars to shimmer above. You close your eyes briefly, letting the gentle evening soundscape wash over you, the fatigue of labor settling into calm. The ordinary, unremarkable rhythms of farm life, sweat, sun, soil, water, learning, and laughter, are profoundly enough to soothe even the weariest soul.
The evening deepens, and the world softens into quiet shades of blue and silver. You sit beneath the acacia tree, your sons beside you, their small hands still brushing crumbs from the bread you shared. The air is cool now, carrying faint whispers of river, reeds, and distant cooking fires. The barley sways gently in the breeze, creating a soft, continuous murmur that blends with the hum of insects settling for the night. It is the music of ordinary life, persistent, unhurried, and reassuring. You close your eyes briefly, feeling the lingering warmth of the day in your muscles and skin, and let the fatigue of work drift through you like a gentle tide. Sweat, dust, and sun have left traces on your body, but they also carry satisfaction, the quiet proof of effort completed, of seeds sown, of care given. Life continues in cycles, you realize, in repetition, rhythm, and gentle observation. Each movement in the fields, each sip of water, each correction offered to your sons is a thread in the timeless fabric of existence along the Nile. Above, stars begin to shimmer faintly, tiny sparks in the dark sky. You imagine generations past standing on this same soil, watching similar stars, tending similar furrows, and feeling similar satisfaction in ordinary labor. The continuity is comforting. It whispers that life, in its simplest forms, is enough. The river flows steadily,
The barley sways, the insects hum, and somewhere a distant night bird calls. Everything moves in quiet harmony, a meditation on patience, endurance, and subtle joy. You breathe deeply, letting the rhythm of the evening settle your mind. Sweat, soil, sun, and water have woven together into a gentle, enduring poetry. The ordinary, unremarkable moments, the planting, the irrigation, the laughter of children are enough to fill the senses, calm the mind, and soothe the soul. Now let your thoughts drift with the gentle pulse of the Nile, the whisper of barley, and the quiet hum of life continuing beyond the day. The fields are at rest. You are at rest. Sleep arrives softly, and the ordinary world becomes a gentle, comforting lullaby.